Welcome to A New Dimension. I'm Subrata Bagchi, and with me in the studio today we have Dr. Prabha Chandra. Doctor, welcome. And Dr. Prabha Chandra is the head of the Department of Psychiatry at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, and she is also secretary to the International Association for Women's Mental Health. So, Doctor, thank you so much for coming as my guest to A New Dimension.
It's my pleasure.
It is, a privilege for us to have you come here to talk about women and mental health as a subject. But just tell me, how's the day been so far?
The day's been busy. It's been my outpatient, and I've seen 4 women with different varieties of problems. One young woman with an intellectual disability whom the family is thinking of getting married. One software engineer who has a sexual problem and physical health problems which are probably of psychological origin. And then another woman who wants to get pregnant but has had depression in the past, and she and her husband came and discussed it with me. So it's been a full day so
what
far.
About the fourth lady?
Oh, the fourth lady? The fourth lady actually had an eating disorder.
Okay. And in what age range do these 4, for example, fall?
Well, all these women were, I think, below the age of 35, really. They're quite young women, yeah.
And is this largely an urban phenomena, or you think this could be even in case of rural women?
No, absolutely not. I mean, so for example, one woman, the woman with an intellectual disability whose family wanted to get her married, came from rural Davangere.
Okay.
And another woman came from Nellore. So, it's definitely not an urban phenomena. I think it's there in every corner of India.
So it's not an urban-rural issue, neither is a rich-poor issue.
Not at all.
But coming to the specific point for which, I'm very keen to hear your views is, here's a country of 1.3 billion people. And we are told that we have less than 4,000 psychiatrists and probably about 10,000 trained medical personnel. That makes it really a drop in the ocean. And in that entire thing, you have 50% of the 1.3 billion people as women. But I'm told that doesn't make that 50% actually 50% of the problem. And some people say that women's mental health is probably a far bigger issue, not only for the individual who is suffering, sometimes silently, but the caregivers, and also being the central part of the idea of a family, it has much bigger ramifications. So tell us, what do you think about this whole issue about women in mental health? Should we be specifically drawing attention to the gender here?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, and I have often pondered over this whole issue that, why is women's mental health given so much more importance than, say, men's mental health? In fact, there are societies for women's mental health, there are books on women's mental health, but…
In this country, or you're talking globally?
In this country as well. So for example, the Indian Psychiatric Society has a task force on women's mental health, but does not have a task force on men's mental health, So obviously there is an issue here. Gender can, modify manifestations of mental health problems in so many ways. So I'm sure there are men who have mental health problems as well, and men have unique mental health problems. They have problems of their own. But I think the reason why women's mental health has become such an important issue is, one, women outnumber men in terms of the number of women who have depression, say, which is the commonest condition in the world in terms of mental health problems.
So are you telling me that women are more prone to certain categories of mental health issues?
That's right.
And is there a biological basis for that, or it's both biological and social?
Well, I try to look at it as a triangle, really. So you have the biological, you have the social and cultural. So I think both are quite mixed with each other. And the third is actually psychological. So women are made differently from men psychologically. And this is not just about the biology and the social construction of gender. But there are ways in which women cope with their problems and issues, the way they communicate, the way they internalize their problems, which are uniquely women. You know, so I think it's like a triangle with the woman in the middle, and all of these in some way contribute to her strength as well as to her vulnerabilities.
Yeah. So, doctor, tell me, if you look at, we use the word woman, but we're really talking about an entire lifetime, from the time that a girl child comes to the world to the time that she is pre-teens, she has a puberty, then an adolescent and a young adult, and then she is a young woman, and then of course the later states. So are the health related issues potentially different, matching somewhat or overlapping somewhat with these different phases of womanhood?
Absolutely. I think probably maybe that is one reason why women's mental health becomes that much more unique, because life stages, including reproductive life stages, in some way determine the path that women's health, particularly mental health, will take. But all kinds of health. So even physical health is quite determined by life stages. So for example, puberty seems to be like a key turning point for young girls. And before puberty, boys and girls have the same rates of most disorders, particularly depression, anxiety. And then suddenly at puberty there's a peak, and girls have 4 times more the chances of developing depression as compared to boys. So something's happening there.
So, doctor, let's talk about women, not just as a broad brush word, because it's really about womanhood than about women. And that starts with the girl child being born to puberty, to the time that she grows up, to the time that you go through the reproductive cycle, and then thereafter. So depending on the different phases, do you see different kinds of challenges and issues as far as mental health for women is concerned?
Yeah, I think that's a very key issue. I mean, let's start from birth till puberty. That's one phase which I think is very important, not given as much attention as it should. In a lot of families, when a girl child is born, there is not necessarily a lot of jubilation, particularly in some situations. And quite often a girl may not be given the kind of importance that she should be given, or the kind of expectations that are there from her may be very different compared to the boy child. So I think a lot of girls, even when they are very young, grow up with a sense of not being sort of second grade citizens, so to say, even in the family. And the kind of roles given to them are also not very empowering. They're expected to be quiet and seen not heard kind of situations, and that's true for many families. So I think that's one area which creates that vulnerability. Like, as she enters the family, she's not very sure whether she's wanted or not.
Kind of set her up to be an unsure individual,
That's right,
irrespective of a mental health issue.
That's right. So that creates a vulnerability, sort of not being valued and validated in some way in the family setup. And then after that, we also know the chances of abuse, sexual abuse, are much, much more among young girls compared to, say, young boys. And that, if it happens, then that creates a vulnerability, especially if when she tries to disclose or she's not given the kind of protection she needs, then, or if she tells somebody and it's not believed, then that again creates a kind of trauma, which is a second vulnerability. So if you've had, and in case the family is not very well knit, it has its own issues, parents are not there for the children, then that's a third vulnerability, which of course may be common to boys and girls. But if the girl has come in with a set of vulnerabilities, then that adds on to it. And then comes puberty.
Yes.
Now, puberty by itself is a very positive change for a girl. All the good things are happening. She's growing in the right direction. But hormonally and for the brain, it creates a certain kind of problem, which increases her vulnerability to develop some specific problems. Specifically, I think depression is 4 times more common in girls at puberty. So that's something which is like a tip.
4 times compared to boys.
Compared to boys,
Okay.
that's right.
And how much of that is likely to be a passing phase, and how much of that needs serious attention?
Well, that's a little difficult to say, you know.
But as a practicing doctor,
Yeah.
you have a feel, is it like 50% of the cases you think will get into full blown depression?
Yeah,
Is it,
so it's not really like that. It's not that puberty will cause a girl to get develop depression and after that she either continues or doesn't continue. But what has been said is that at the age of 13 or 14 till she is 80, women have 4 times
okay?
rates of depression higher. So puberty in some way makes that difference. So it's probably the hormones which are actually increasing the vulnerability in somebody who's already in some ways vulnerable.
So we are basically saying that all things remaining equal, a girl child or a woman has significantly higher risk of developing depression
That's right. Yeah, and anxiety also.
and anxiety also.
And then, of course, your question about the reproductive life stages. So, so a lot of women, now they're brought up in this environment, they've studied, and then they get married. And apart from sort of urban educated women, most of them are uprooted from all that is familiar and put into an environment and a milieu where there is everything is unfamiliar.
So they have to start all over again.
They have to start all over
Yeah,
again.
the-
So
the-
all the connections that they've made
Yep.
are actually broken, and she's expected to simply within a day, within a week, completely adjust to this very new environment.
Yeah, you're kind of continuously being forced to be a stranger in life.
That's right. So, I think that creates again a huge amount of vulnerability. So, while many girls might, because they may think this is their lot, it's culturally acceptable, you're supposed to do this, may somehow manage. But if you are somebody who's had vulnerabilities previously, now this particular woman probably finds it very, very difficult. And sometimes you move, far away. And especially in India, the culture is that once you're in your husband's place, that family becomes your primary family, and you're not supposed to be so dependent on your parents. Parents also kind of tell her, now you have to adjust to your new family. So what does this person do? I often ask men that if you had to do this, if you had to take yourself away from your everything that's familiar and go to a completely new environment, how would you ever adjust?
Are Western women any better for that matter?
Maybe this kind of vulnerability doesn't happen for them. This particular vulnerability is very unique to our Indian situation. In the West, I guess it's the husband and wife and getting used to each other at a very equal level.
Yeah, the sense of equality is far
So
higher.
that is challenging in itself.
Right.
But this is, a woman has to adjust to a whole range of people and to somebody, and to be with the husband who's also very unfamiliar. He's not her ally or anything like that. He's, unfamiliar.
So doctor, tell me, during a normal day's work, during the course of your, everyday engagements at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, if you look at these different phases, where do you see your, people coming in for mental health assistance peak really?
I think that for me, it comes in soon after marriage. That's the time a lot of young women come.
Period.
Or to be more specific, women between the ages of 20 to 30, 35. That seems to be the time, and soon after marriage. And that's a time within 2-3 years of marriage that the husband's family starts thinking that she has a problem, she's not able to adjust, and this term, she doesn't listen to us, she's not able to work. Yesterday a man told me she doesn't wash my shirt collars properly, and that was the reason they felt that she had a problem. I mean, so the expectations are so
Sounds
enormous.
like a man had a problem.
Well, sometimes the expectations are so enormous that so the labeling happens that she's slow, she's unable to do the day-to-day activities. So the emphasis is more on her performance rather than on companionship or listening to her voice and trying to understand what's happening to her. So I think in that sense, that seems to be a fairly vulnerable stage. And before you know it, she's pregnant. So she's coming in with all these vulnerabilities.
Right.
And invariably she does not have control over her, childbearing. So this woman who came today told me that, it's been 3 months of marriage, she's a pharmacist, she has a mental health problem, and she says, we've come here to get advice about having a child. And I said, are you ready to become a mother? She says, no, I'm not ready to become a mother, but my husband wants it and my mother-in-law wants it. So, I'm going to listen to what they're saying. So, I think so. In those circumstances, this is a woman who's obviously going to suffer because she's not ready to be a mother,
Right, right.
and all the pressure that's being put on her, in addition to her having a mental health problem. You know, so I think these are the kind of
Let me ask you
vulnerabilities.
this question, this very, how should I put it, this very pointed question. A person with a mental health background, okay, a mental health issue like this lady that we're talking about here, you know, should she or can she, is it desirable at all that that person should have a child, and is the child at very high risk because one of the parents or both parents have a mental health problem?
Okay, so the first issue is about marriage, and then the second issue is about having a child. Now, it's every human being's right to have a partner. It's every human being's right to have a child. So, you know, I think that in terms of a rights approach, definitely everybody has a right. The reason why somebody gets married is to provide companionship, to be an equal partner, to have somebody to look after you, to have somebody you can look after. So the reason for marriage is at one level that, but at a social level it's something else. It's about you know, having a respectful you know, name in society, that you're
Sure.
married. So a lot of parents actually hide things about women with mental health problems, and it's much more for women than for men. And one, they think that maybe marriage will actually fix things, which is completely untrue. And the second thing is, they think
It
that
might actually aggravate things.
yes, because of the kind of stress that the woman is going through. And the second, they think it's all right to not tell the husband about, the potential husband, about the problem, because, you know, nobody will get married to her, and invariably use you know, words like depression or stress, and not really talk about the problem.
So you basically palm her off.
Yeah, I mean, in their minds, they are, you know, they're doing the right thing for their girl, because they are concerned and they feel that after them, who will look after this person? So in their minds, they're doing the right thing.
So doctor, you know, I know we have a time constraint here. I would like you to tell us, you know, what should the society do in order to better provide for the female child and then the woman, as far as the mental health challenges and problems are concerned, and within that, what kind of things that the medical community should do so that we are at hand and able to deal with the issues far better than what we are doing today.
Okay, so I think that the first thing would be to provide a very secure environment for the child
At home.
at home, you know, soon after she's born.
So
and
recognize that a female child is at higher risk, particularly what you talked about pre-puberty, is more exposed to, for example, both
emotional as
people
well as
making her inhibited, and also as she's growing up being an easy prey for you know, sexual predatory behavior by
so I
somebody.
think valuing her, validating her, making sure
Giving
that
her the
she's
safety.
protected, you know, making sure that if she has a problem, she has a space where she can talk about and she's heard. So I think I'm providing her with the educational background and resources that will make her, you know, flower really. That's the first thing. Second thing is kind of preparing her later for what she's going to go through, you know,
Right.
equipping
the
her with the
hormonal
skills.
changes.
The hormonal changes, also equipping her with skills. So girls are very often not equipped with conflict resolution skills, or I mean, neither are boys really, but you know, girls have to do this because they, like you mentioned, they are the center, pivotal part of the family. So negotiation, communication, managing her emotions better, learning to soothe herself, because she is going to go through many challenges.
Right.
Preparing her for motherhood, I think that's very key. Even a mentally ill mother, a woman can be a mother, and we have had many situations where they can be good mothers. But I think the key thing is to prepare them and to make sure that she is ready to become a mother. With all these vulnerabilities, if she's not ready, she's doing it for society or husband or her in-laws, then you know, that child is again going to be at risk. So I think it's very important that a mother is a great potential, because while she has the baby in her womb and later, she has great potential in preventing this child in having a problem, and to you know, enable another good citizen to grow. So I think it's key that that phase of a woman's life is really paid attention to. And here I would say the spouse has a major role, the partner has a major role.
So doctor, thank you so much for giving all the information, but one thing that I would request is there a message that you would like to share on the subject of women and mental health with the larger audience out there, or within that larger audience, any specific group that you think could help?
Well, I think everybody's responsibility is to ensure that a woman has good mental health. But if I had to choose that one group, I would say it's the men, because I think women, are part of men's lives in so many ways, and I think they are also part of the risk. So a lot of vulnerability happens because of the men. Men are the partners whom women can communicate to. So I would say that fathers, brothers, partners, husbands, sons are my sort of target group most of the time. If they understand a woman's vulnerabilities, try to look beyond just the anger or the anguish or the anxiety or the inability to do things, and try and understand what's going on behind that. Where is this woman coming from? What has she been subject to? How her strengths, her inner resources, and tries to sort of energize that rather than focusing on her weaknesses, protecting her yet strengthening her, and recognizing that a woman is actually very strong, very resilient, and trying to sort of make sure that that resilience comes through. Despite the fact that she has a mental illness or depression or whatever, she's still trying to survive. She's somebody who's trying to fight with the system. So I think if men can do that, that would be the
So
one.
you basically enlist the support of the 50% of the 1.3 billion
That's right.
people.
That's right.
And that's kind of counterintuitive, because we tend to think about women's problems as women's problems. But you were saying bring the men into the picture.
Definitely.
And that certainly brings a new dimension to a new dimension. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Doctor, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.